Oh yeah, it's your boy Kilo Loco, and today what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be going over some Firebase for you, boy. Yeah, or girl, we're gonna be covering Firestore, and we're gonna be going over CRUD operations, which are create, read, update, and delete. So yeah, the tools that we're going to be using: Swift 4, Xcode 9, Terminal, Cocoa Pods in the terminal, and obviously the Firebase SDKs. The skill level I have set to advanced, and that's because you need to know how to set up the table view, which is part of the starter project. Know how to use alerts, once again part of the starter project. But we're also going to be working with generics. This isn't mandatory, and I'm going to talk about that in a bit. Should have a strong understanding of networking. You should understand how to do basic networking requests, even though it's covered through the SDK. You should have an understanding of how all that stuff works, and then understand the uses of custom utility classes, such as you create a service and it does this thing and it does that thing for you, and you keep all that code in one place. Now, if you're not an advanced level developer, you can still watch this video. What I'm going to do, this tutorial essentially is for all of y'all. It's going to go over the basic CRUD operations, and that's going to be kind of like the beginner portion. And I explain everything all the way through. If you haven't seen my videos before, I try to do a pretty good job. I think I do a pretty good job of explaining things, and anybody should be able to follow my tutorials. I'm going to explain everything as we go through it. So we'll get up to the CRUD operations. I'll show you how to actually get them set up. But the implementation is kind of the advanced part. We're going to be making Firebase Codable, and just pretty much making it as sexy as we can. We're going to have all of our code in one area of the project that can be used throughout all areas of the project. We're going to be making it reusable and dynamic, so that if you do plan on using this in a production level application, you can just follow this tutorial. Now, before we begin, if you want the starter project, you can find it here at kiloloco.com/p/YouTube, or hopefully in the future, you're going to be able to find it on the Kilo Loco app, which I'm working really hard on getting out. Balancing a family and doing this for you guys, and putting out an app and having side projects. It's kind of it takes a lot of time, so I'm doing it as fast as I can, and hopefully it's out soon by the time you're watching this video. But if you watch it when it launches, obviously it's not. But and make sure that you subscribe if this video helps you, and share the channel. It always helps. So next is demo time. Let me show you what we're going to actually be making, so that you can get an idea of what is going on. Okay, so as you can see, we're going to have an app, little table view. You're going to have a user with their age right there, and then when you press the plus button, what's going to happen is you're going to be able to enter in some information like Billy, and Billy is 55. I don't know why they still call him Billy. And then when you add it, it goes to the Firebase database. It gets stored right there, and what you can do is you can update their age to 56. He turned 56, but then Billy got dead and we deleted him. So create, read, update, delete, all those operations in this type of app. Now if I'm going too slow for you, make sure that you put me on 2x so I sound super funny, or check in the description. I'm going to try to have this video broken up into chunks, so you can see exactly what's going on at what part of the video, because it's probably going to be like over an hour. So let's get into it. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to go through the starter project. As you can see here, we're in storing that fire. That's the name of that project. Make sure that you do not call it Firebase Store or Firestore or anything like that. Whenever you are working with dependencies, you don't want to call it exactly what the dependency is called, or whatever the project is called, or the Cocoa Pod, because it can have some problems. So as you can see, we have the same layout right here. If you press if you press plus, you can put in something. I'll just put in my name, my age. I do add, nothing happens because there is no storage of any kind, and obviously we can't see the update or the delete because there are no objects in there. So yeah, that's where we're at. As you can see, we just have a simple view controller embedded in a navigation controller. We're going to be using the default cells to populate everything. Got a little bar button right there. Got that sexy users up in there. And then if we go over to our view controller, we can actually see some of this stuff come alive. Yeah, man, yeah. So nothing in the view did load. We just have the add tapped. When we tap on it, it calls this alert service. If we go ahead and take a look at the alert service, we have a add user. It's a static function, and all this does is bring up the alert. And as you can see, it has two text fields, name and age. And then all it's doing right now is it's printing out that name and age whenever whenever you press add. So as you can see right here in the logs, it just printed those out. Age is going to be a number, so that's why we're unwrapping it like so. And update is essentially the same exact thing, except we took out age. We took out name. We only have age, and you can only update age. We're going to be making some modifications to these after we set up our user object. So let's go back to the view controller real quick so you guys can see what's going on in the table view delegates / data sources. So right now we don't have a user object. I want to go over that with you guys since it's going to be codable. I'm just going to go over that with you. So we're just returning 0, and then when we do have a cell, it's just going to be the type that has a subtitle, so that we have the large text name and the smaller text age. When we do select a row, all it's going to do is it's going to call that update user alert, as we can see there, and then we will have the delete animation in there as soon as we have a cell. So when we swipe to the left, it will show the delete button, but we have no functionality in there. So yeah, so that's where we're at. The first thing that I want to do is I want to actually make the user object, just so that we can start updating some of these things right now. So let's go ahead and do that. It's just going to be a your normal old Swift file like so. We gonna make a user like so, and then me, your boy Kilo Loco likes to work with them structs though. So we're gonna say user, and you could make it codable right here if you want. It's not necessary, so it's not mandatory at this moment, so we can come back to it and visit it a little bit later. Let's just get everything going for right now. So first thing that we want is we want a name, which is going to be of type string, and you normally can't update a name, so we're going to use let. We're going to use var for age because we can update an age. So, and if I wanted to, I could have put both of them put both of them as var. It doesn't really matter, and we'll be able to initialize that like so. So now that we have our user object, what we can do is go back to our view controller. We can create an array of users. So we'll just say var users is equal to an empty array of users like so, and we want to initialize it so that we can use it immediately in the table view data source, and we could just say users.count for the amount of rows in the section. And we can also say we can access the specific user at that index path or in the specific cell by saying let user equal users, and we're going to say index path dot row like so. Now that we have access to whatever user is going to be in that slot, we can access the properties of this specified user by saying cell.text label.text is equal to, guess what, user.name like so. And let's see, cell.details text label.text is equal to user.age. Now we can't do that because age is a number or an integer. So what we have to do is we have to wrap it in string like so, which will convert it to a string. Cool beans. All right. So now when we do actually create a user, it will be stored in here. So let's go back over to our alerts section and let's fix these add users, the alerts that add and update the user so that they'll actually start working once we're ready to implement the methods that work with Firebase. So what we want to do is we want to create a user. As you can see, once you do add, once you press the add button, it needs to do something, and what it's going to do is it's going to grab the name, it's going to convert the age string into age number, and we can create an user like so. So let user equals user, initialize this bad boy like so, and then we say name, bam, and then we say age like bam, like whoo, like bam. So now we can delete the printing, and we have a completion handler up here, but it's returning nothing. If you don't know about completion handlers, make sure you check out my callbacks and threading, or my threading, callbacks and threading video. It explains it pretty well in there, if you ask me. So we want to return a user, so we're going to say completion, and we're going to pass in that user like so, bam. So now we're returning a user. We just want to do the same exact thing down here, except we need to know which user we're updating, right? So what we want to say is update user, but not like this. We want to say update, just so that our function signature looks a little bit sexier when we call it, so that it says update, and then we put in, like if the user was Kyle, we would say update Kyle in, the view controller, and then we do some stuff, right? So we'll say update, we'll do underscore so that it immediately will say Kyle. So user of type user, and then we do a comma right here. So now we're passing in a user. So now we can use the properties of this user that we're going to be passing in. So we'll say update, and what we'll say is update user dot first or user dot name, right? So now it'll say update name or update Kyle or something like that, instead of just update user, which is a little bit better. Also, we want to show what age they currently are, so that you can increase it or change it appropriately. So we'll say age text field dot text is equal to user dot age, and then once again we can't do that because this is a number, so we'll just wrap it in string like that, which will convert it to a string. Oh yeah. So now what we want to do is we want to say var user, or updated user is equal to this user, and the reason we're doing that is because this is a let constant. Whenever you have any of these arguments, they're all lets, so we need a variable so we can update it like so, and we just say updated user dot age be equal to, guess what, that age, boy. Yeah. So once again, on the completion, what we want to do is we want to return the user, right? Yeah, we want to return that user, Kyle. So what we gonna do? We gonna pass in that user, Kyle. That's what we gonna do. Yeah. So we gonna pass in that updated user. So now the updated user will come back, and what we want to do, what we really want to do, is we have to update these calls because they will no longer work. We have to say user in, and what we'll do is when we add a user, we'll just print that user, and when we update a user, once again we have to pass in the user because now our function is returning a user in the completion handler, and we'll also say we'll print that user. And we just want to do this just to make sure that everything's gonna work like we expected to. And remember that we did update this signature call, so instead of update user, what it's going to be is it's going to be update, and then we actually have to specify which user is here, right? So we have to say, just like we did up here where we got that specific user, we have to do it right here. Let user equals users index path dot row, and so update, and we'll say user in the view controller, and then we get the new user. So we'll just say updated user, so there's no confusion. But Kyle, you're already confusing. There's nothing you can do about it. Oh, well, my bad. I'm going to try to make it a little bit better for you. My bad, son. My bad. Alrighty. And you know what? We're going to have to do that a little bit later, but for the delete, we're going to have to grab the user and delete them. But, we cross that bridge when we get to it. So if everything works so far, all we're doing is adding a user, and this still won't show. This still won't show to our table view, and we won't even actually be able to test out the update. But we will be able to test out the add just to make sure that it is working. So we'll say Kyle, and we'll say 26, and if we go ahead and clear out all that garbage, and we say add, bam, you got that user. All right, so we know that it's working. We got that user working. So now let's do what you guys came here to do, right? Because we've been spending way too much time in this starter project. Kyle, this is not what I came here for. All right, so what we got to do is we have to go to firebase.google.com. Do it. So as long as you have a Gmail account, that's essentially your credentials to log into Firebase, because Firebase is obviously part of Google. It's one of their softwares or whatever, however you want to call it. Oh, Kyle, you missed. I know I suck, man. I suck. Oh, man. All right, here we go. Actually, because I know my head's going to be like right there. Okay, so what we want to do is go to the console. And Firebase recently got a facelift, and they wanted to make everything look all funky. So, if you haven't been in Firebase for a while, it's going to look a little bit different. But what you want to do is you want to add project, and we're going to give it our awesome name, which is saving dat fire, right? Dat fire, save dat fire, and we're going to create that project. Oh yeah, create it good. Damn, Firebase needs to run some laps because it's getting a little bit slow. All right, so once you're in this brand new sexy looking console, I kind of like it. It's all right. What you got to do is you have to go down over here to database. Gonna do get started like so. And what we're going to do is we're going to try Firestore beta. Now, keep in mind, this is a beta. If you want to put in your production product, that's cool, but they constantly tell you, hey, this is a beta. If your app goes to hell, don't come crying to us, pretty much. But it seems pretty stable to me. I've only tested it out a little bit, can't so it's perfect, but it's on you what you want to do. The real-time database is still really strong and probably pretty good for a production product. Anyway, start in locked mode. No, we want to start in test mode because we don't want to have to deal with the whole setup. If you start in locked mode, what you have to do is you have to authenticate using Firebase, and you have to do the sign up and all this other stuff. We ain't doing that. So just do start in test mode, and that will allow us to get going. So you might be wondering, what's the difference between real-time database and Firestore? Well, I'll tell you the difference. The main difference is that Firestore is essentially the real-time database 2.0, but they couldn't just go and break everything and say, hey, this is Firebase real-time database 2.0, because it would piss a lot of people off because their projects are built on top of it. There would be a lot of code breaking changes. So what they ended up doing was they were like, oh, let's just make a new one and, call it all kinds of different stuff. And also let's charge it differently. So the way that you're being charged is a little bit different. I'm not going to get into that because I don't fully understand it, but keep in mind that, the Firestore is generally geared towards better scalability, and with that scalability comes them charges, though. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so we got our real-time, database in here and whatnot, and what I just realized is that they didn't give us a little tutorial on how to do all this stuff. So what we have to do is we have to go back. We have to go back over to our home, and we actually have to download our iOS info.plist from Google. So what we have to do is put in our bundle ID. So let's go ahead and grab that bundle ID, which is over here, project. You guys should really know how to get this, honestly though. And nickname, we ain't need no damn nickname. Just register that app. Oh yeah. Okay, so now we're gonna download this bad boy. I have like 1 million, so it's probably gonna be called something different. See how it's -2? You don't want that. So we're gonna open this in Finder right now. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna copy it. Bam. Overall, all you want to do is you just want to have it somewhere where it's not gonna, conflict with the name when you update that name. All right, so I'm gonna drag it over to that desktop, or yeah, I'll just drag it on the desktop. That works. Hell. So now when I go to my desktop, what I want to do is I want to rename this bad boy. So let's go over. We're gonna rename it to Google service -info.plist, no dashes after that, no numbers after that. Make sure that it is like that, or else you will run into problems. I promise you. Okay, so after we do that, we downloaded it. Next, continue. All we gotta do is it's gonna tell, come on, man. All it's gonna tell us to do is it's gonna say pod init. Gotta throw in that Firebase, do pod install. Yeah, we know how to do that. And then it's gonna tell you to configure in the over here in the did finish launching with options, which is not mandatory, by the way. Just keep that in mind. The way that we're gonna set it up, I'm gonna show you that you can throw that anywhere, but we'll still put it in the did finish launching with options anyway. So let's go back over to our project, and I'm gonna show you how to do this. What we want to do is you don't want to drag it and drop it, because Xcode has some weird bug that if you drag it and drop it, sometimes it can't see the file. So what we'll do is we'll just do the add down here. We're gonna add a file. We're gonna, oh hell no, maybe I did this wrong. Okay, so we're gonna click on this folder right here, right click. We're going to do add file to whatever your project's name is. I left mine on the desktop. Let's do that. Bam, add it in there, real sexy like, and there it is. So make sure that it does look exactly like that. The labeling is exactly like that. And now what we want to do is we're going to close this project, because we're going to go over to our terminal and start doing some stuff, guys. We're going to do some cool stuff. All right, blow this up for the beautiful people at home. We're going to clear that out, and make sure that you are inside your projects folder when you're in the terminal, right? And you guys probably can't see that well, so let's do it like this. Make sure that you're in here in your projects folder, and what you want to do is you want to do pod init. Bam. What that's going to do is going to allow you to have a pod file, so you can just open up that pod file. Mine's going to open up in Xcode because I got it like that. Yours might open up in something different. That's fine. And what we're going to do is we're going to say pod, and you're going to have a little single quote, and you're going to say Firebase / core. Bam. That's what it told us to do in the instructions. Then we're going to say pod Firebase base / Firestore. Oh yeah. But you got to know how to spell, guys. You got to know how to spell, or else it will not work. So make sure you spell that right. You're going to do Command S to save it. It automatically saves, I think. But just to be safe, you want to do that. So what we got to do is say pod install. And what it's going to do is it's going to go out, download all the things that Firebase needs to set up this project properly. Damn, that's a lot of stuff. And when it comes back, you're ready to open up your new XC workspace. Yeah. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and open up that let's see. Oh, storing. Open storing that fire. Now you want to open up the XC workspace. Make sure that it's the XC workspace. If you're doing it from Finder, it's the white file. Make sure, man, or else it will not work. Okay. Alrighty. All right. So what we want to do is we want to create an entire service class that's going to handle all of our Firebase stuff, so that we don't have to say import Firebase here, import Firebase there, import Firebase everywhere. No, we don't want that, right? So what we'll do is we're going to create a new file, Swift file, I think. like so. Oh yeah. And we're gonna just call it, I'm going throwback with the naming conventions. Fur, that's what they used to call it. So I'm gonna go Firestore service. Now remember that whenever you call one of your files or anything in your project, something similar to whatever the dependency has, it could cause problems. Now I know that Firebase does not have fur in it any longer, so I'm okay with that, so we're good. But just keep that in mind whenever you're calling it whatever you want to call it. So first thing we want to do is we want to import Firebase, and then we want to import Firestore. And what we're going to do is we're going to command B to see if that will build. And if it builds, that means that the files were properly imported into the project and we're ready to start using these two dependencies. Whoops, Kyle made a mistake and it's still building. But yeah, there is no such thing as Firestore just by itself. You have to say Firebase Firestore all long and nasty like so. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's gonna make it through. I don't really want to sit here and wait. I'm kind of tired, guys, and getting sick. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna start going through with our class. So our class is gonna be called Firestore service, like bam, like so. Now if you know me, I like to create make sure that you cannot create an instance of this Firebase. You can't say Firestore service open close parentheses anywhere but in here. So what we're going to do is we're going to say private init, and we're going to say just that regular one, and we want to actually have a singleton. So we'll say static let shared equals Firestore service, and we'll initialize it like that, singleton reference like so. Awesome. So what are you telling me? Nah, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm big, you're small, and there's nothing you can do about it. All right, so I think all this is fine. It's telling us no such thing as Firestore, but we renamed it, buddy. So yeah, just remember that Xcode's a bully and it doesn't want to play with you. So remember that the first thing that you want to do is you want to do the configure of your Firebase app, essentially everything that's running Firebase on it. So what we have to do is we want to have a configure function. Configure, call it whatever you want. I'm calling mine configure because that makes sense, because all we're going to do is just say Firebase Firebase app dot configure. Now we could have done this in the app delegate, but then we would have to import stuff, and we don't like to import stuff all over the place if we don't have to. So all this is just boilerplate extra stuff. It's not going to break anything if we delete it. And what we're going to do is we're going to say Firestore service, and we're going to say this .shared .configure. Now, mine's a little bit longer than the Firebase one, but no import up there. Very sexy, very, very, very beautiful. Like now, I told you that we're going to be going over CRUD operations, right? So let's get those out the way. Func create. Right, we're gonna have create function, and then we're gonna have a read function, right? Create read. Whoa, Kyle, what's up with those brackets though? They went all backwards and stuff. I know. Update, and after that it's gonna be delete. Oh hell, you guys are running into my head, I bet. Let's do that. Func delete. Oh yeah. Okay, so what we're gonna go over is how to create read, update, delete. Now what you'll read in the documentation is they're gonna tell you to do something like this. Let me find out how to do it. You're gonna have like some reference, let reference equals Firestore Firestore. I don't know why they do it. That's so weird. Call it something different, man. Call it shared. And it's going to say collection. Now, I'll talk about collections right now, but users, right? Now, collection is, you kind of think of it like a table. Now, Firebase is NoSQL, so you don't really have tables, but collection is essentially everything that you're working with in Firestore. When you go back over here to the Firestore thing, getting started. And when you add a collection, this would be like your users. This would be like your users table, right? And then in users, you have like a user ID, right? And we're gonna be working with the auto ID. And the field would be like name, and it's gonna be like name would be equal to string, and we're gonna add another field which would be age, which would be a number, right? And the name would be like Kyle, and the age would be 26, right? So when we create this, as you can see, the users is kind of like a table. This would be like your collections are like tables, but they really are just documents. And it's a collection of documents, and each document it has this thing, all this stuff written on it, and this would be like the file name of the document. So if you want to think about it like in Finder, right? If we go to Finder, this is like our Finder window, right? And what we have in this Finder window, when we click on users, that would be like oh, you guys are looking at my stuff. Okay, when we click on users, that would be like me clicking on files, right? And then each file has a name, right? So that would be the name. Now we go to Codable, Codable names, right? And then you see all the content in there, and that's what that content is. So I kind of hope that makes sense. It's a file system. And when you create a reference, you want to reference that folder or that collection, right? So when we go back to the code, this is what they're telling you to do. They're saying, do this user reference, right? And but what happens when you have like pets, so then you'd have to do this, and it starts looking all funky, and you have pets, and you have your pet reference and all this other stuff. So I'm gonna get to that, but not for the beginners. Beginners, you can just start off with this. You can be doing this, but we're gonna make this super scalable in a little bit. But let's get this going for right now. Now, when you have your reference to whatever folder or collection that you're working with, what you want to do is when you want to create, let's see. Let me see how I want to do this. Okay, so you get your reference. So you say user reference, right? And you could have just copied this entire thing and put it right there too if you wanted. So user reference, and what you want to do is you want to add a document because everything is in documents. And as you can see, the document has data. Now, we're not going to be covering error handling in this video. But if you wanted to do error handling, you would just choose this one. It has a completion with the error. It'll print out the error in the end. And, if I run into a problem, then, I'll just add on the completion after the fact and find out what the error is. But overall, what you want to do is you just choose add document. And then as you can see, it's just a dictionary or, JSON type format. So if you just press enter, we could have done it like this. We could say let, data or parameters is equal to a string in any, so it'd be like name, right? And that would be Kyle, and then we could go to the next line and it would be age, and that would be a number, so it's like 26. So then we could just pass in our parameters like so, and that's literally like all that we have to do. Let me double check, make sure that I am telling you guys the truth. Yeah, that's all you really have to do. So it's super easy. It can't tell what we're doing, so we have to explicitly tell it what type it is. So it's a string, any type of dictionary. There we go. So now we can pass it in. Now if we call create, we'll be able to create that user in the backend, and we'll just call this Billy Bob, and remember he's 55, right? So now when we call create, if we go over here into our view did load, we're just going to do in the view did load just to test it out. And we do Firebase or Firestore service dot shared dot create, and we call that create right there. It should be able to create that user in the backend, and we could watch it happen in live time. So we already have this one user, and we have it. We're not specifying what the document's being called. It's just auto handling that ID for us, which is like the easier way, and it's like it makes sure that it makes sure that you don't repeat yourself, which is pretty cool. So I like it. So it's firing up right now. When the view did load hits, what's going to happen is we're going to see this get updated in real time. Oh man, see, so well, this is partially why I don't do this, but anyway, since we have a singleton instance of it like so, it's not going to work this specific way. So what we could do is we can just drag this, and the reason why it crashed was because we were initializing a Firestore instance before Firebase app configure was actually called. So my mistake. I'm trying to show you guys the dummy way of doing it, and ran into a little snag right there. So what this will do is if this works, what we're going to do is we're going to create a new user named Billy Bob age 55 onto the collection of users, and that's just all happening right here. So let's go ahead and run that bad boy. Let's sit patiently and wait, children, while we watch the back end do what it does best. Yeah. All right, here we go. Here we go. It's running, and it's good. Oh, yeah. There we go. See, look at Billy Bob like, oh, boss. Spouse. All righty. So as you can see, we were able to create it. Now, that's super easy. That's all you got to do. If you want to create, if you want to read, reading is a little bit different. We could do this same thing over again. We're going to copy this for right now. You can go ahead and copy it for right now. I'm gonna show you the cool way of doing it, like how sexy bosses do it, and we're gonna be a sexy boss. We are gonna be a sexy boss. So for reading, reading is a little bit different. What you could do is you could query, but I don't really like doing the query. I think the more realistic use of your reading is going to be when you do something like observing. So you're gonna want to observe what's happening in that collection, and you could do you could do a query and get a specific set of sub data in there. But the observer is really what we want, because we want our table view to constantly update as this data is changing, which is really sexy. Really sexy. So what we do is we grab our user reference and we just say add snapshot listener, and it gives us this little fire query snapshot block, and we press enter and it gives us a little snapshot. So we'll call this snapshot. Oh, okay, sexy. And error, boy, we ain't playing with them. We ain't even playing with them errors, boy. All right. So snapshot is optional because it might fail if you're calling on like a fake collection. So if let guard let snapshot equals snapshot, else we gonna return that bad boy. We just gonna get that GTFO on it. So what we want to do is on the snapshot, what we can do is we're gonna just print out the documents. Print out each documents, because a snapshot, if you press snapshot, if we type in snapshot dot, you can see that it has documents, which is an array. So if we were to do this for document in snapshot dot documents, and we loop through this bad boy, we can print out each individual document. Yeah. So Look at how small and concise this stuff is. It's really awesome, guys. So this is going to add a listener. So whenever we add a new one, it's automatically going to get called every single time, which is an awesome thing about Firebase in the real time, Firebase slash, Firestore, whatever. But it's constantly listening. So if something changes in the back end, it will automatically print out. And I'm going to show you guys that right here very soon. So when we open it up, we get Kyle, we got to call it, right? Yeah, Kyle, why didn't you call it? So what we're going to do is we're just going to call it. We're going to say, we're going to read. If you know how to read, or know how to spell, because apparently I can't. And what we're going to do is we're just going to throw all this stuff on the same page so we could just see it all. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be so beautiful. Like that. Like, oh, okay, sexy. Okay, so this is going to create another Billy Bob. As you can see, it's creating multiple Billy Bobs. So we're going to when we read it, see we have multiple snapshots. So bam, 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 bam. But you're like, well, Kyle can't read that. Well, all we have to do is we have to say .data, and the data is what you actually can read, and that's like JSON format. So when we print it out, we're going to get several of the same looking, Billy Bobs, because we keep running this. We keep running this operation, and in the snapshot you'll just see like Billy Bob, Billy Bob, Billy Bob, Billy Bob, and then it'll be like Kilo or Kyle Lee, right? So that's the cool thing. This is how you read your data into JSON, and then from there you can, like, if you want to create a object out of it, look at that. See, look at that. So I cleared it out, and what I wanted to do was I wanted to add this bad boy. So without even doing anything to the app, what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a new auto by ID or whatever, and we're gonna just say Xavier, my little man, and actually we want to say name, and the name is gonna be Xavier. And then we're going to add a field, and the field is going to be age, and the age is going to be 0, like that. So now, see, look at that. It automatically printed out everything again because it's listening for changes. So whenever there's a change in the back end, it does that. So that's cool. That's cool. All right, Kyle, but how do you update? Well, I'm going to show you how to update. It's actually really easy. All you have to do is it's not that easy, because you have to have a reference to the old you have to have a reference to the ID. So if you don't have that ID, it becomes a little bit of tedious, but we could look in the back end. For right now, we gonna get that ID, and I'm gonna show you how to do it dynamically a little bit later. So let's do this. All right, so we're gonna get our user reference, and we're going to say document, but we want a document path, and the document path is actually the file name or the ID, right? And what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and copy this one. So Xavier is 0, right? And what we'll do is we'll paste that in there, and remember that it's a string, so we want to make it look like a string or something, or like something. And what we're going to do is we're going to say set data, and what we want to do is we're going to pass back this data. So let's grab that data, Xavier's data. We'll just pass that right on in there, and remember that this is like that. And for his age, now we're going to say he's 1. Yay. And now if we go to our view controller and we just say update, and we go back over here, we can watch it happen in live time, guys. In live time. So what will happen is the update's going to be called. Since we selected his ID right here, it's going to go to that document. It's going to say, oh, I guess they want the age to be 1. So let's change that age to 1, and let's see what happens. Bam, one, like so. See, real sexy, real cute. Alrighty, guys. So the last thing that we want to do is we want to delete, right? So let's go ahead and get that delete out the way. And delete, super simple, man. All you have to do is just do the same thing like we did up here. Get the reference, right? And you get your reference. You say user reference dot document, just like we did for the update. You want document with the path. And since we already got Xavier's right there, let's just say we're going to use Xavier again, and we're going to just say delete. And now when we go to view did load, I'm going to say delete like so. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So what we'll do is we'll go over here. We're going to watch it happen in live time. Once again, since we grabbed the ID, it's going to go over here. It's going to run the function, whatever function we called on it. We called delete, and it's going to delete this document, and we'll only have 3 records after that. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So let's go ahead, watch it happen. Watch it happen. Watch it happen. And it didn't work. Oh, it did work. I don't know why it didn't. It looked like it didn't work. I don't know why. That's kind of weird. Anyway, it worked. As you can see, there's only 3 documents. There's no Xavier up in here no more. It just took a little while to update. Maybe my eyes didn't work or something. But anyways, guys, that's all you really need to know in order to create, read, update, and delete. Now, that's fine and dandy and all, but I promised you guys something way sexier than that, didn't I? Didn't I? I did. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean all this garbage up, and we're going to implement it, baby. Oh yeah, we're going to implement it, baby. Oh yeah. So let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing that I want to do is, actually, I don't even want to do all this. What am I doing? First thing that I want to do is I want to make this references thing way sexier. So what we should have, instead of having to do user reference like this, because this is not dynamic, you'd have to pass in a string every time, and that's just not gonna work. That ain't flying with Kyle Lee. That ain't flying with that Kilo Loco. So what you want to do is, well, what you could do is we're gonna create a reference, and you don't want to use this outside, so we'll just say private reference, private function, and we'll just say reference, and we're going to say a reference to what? Well, what's a reference to? A collection reference, right? To collection reference, ends, right? Now we could pass in a string right here, right? And what it would do is we're going to check, well, what exactly is a user reference? Oh, well, it's of type collection reference. So that's what we want to return, a collection reference. Collection reference, right? Right. So we could pass in a string right here, and we could say reference to users, and that would just return our thing. And well, right now we have to say return Firestore dot Firestore, right? Dot collection, and then the collection path is going to be our collection reference, right? Collection reference. So we can just return that, and then what we could do is, instead of doing all this nasty garbage, oh, it capitalized it. It's supposed to be lowercase right there because we want this one, not that. Okay, so what we could do now is we can say reference, right, to string, and we could just say users. Now, ain't that so much sexier? Oh, it is so much sexier, Kyle. Look at that. You saving us some time. I know, right? But watch this. It gets sexier. She about to lose another 20 pounds. Damn. So watch this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to create a new one called FIR. This is going to be a fur, and what did I call it? Fur collection reference. Collection reference. Call it whatever you want. You could give it a way easier, simpler name to spell. I called mine this, and what we're going to do is we're going to have it be an enum that conforms to type string, so that we could do for, and once again, we're going to call it this collection reference up here, right? Collection reference. And all this is going to do is it's going to conform to string. And what it's going to do is it's going to let us say case users, right? Which is really cool, because now when we do it like this, all we can do case pets, we could do case clothes, and we can have all those different tables or collections just like this, right? And when we go back to our Firebase service, all we have to do is change this to take in a fur collection reference, which we just created. Fur collection, it hasn't saved yet, reference, right? It's kind of long. That part gets a little bit ugly, but watch this collection reference. Now we just say dot raw value, like so. And now check this out. Wait, hold on. I'm gonna save it, because this is how we get it to look real sexy. So now 2.users. Oh, Kyle. No, you did it. Oh, I did. Watch this. To close. Oh, I think I spelled that one. Clothers. Yeah, to clothers, right? Ain't that sexy? That's so sexy, Kyle. That's super duper sexy. Damn, Kyle, you make it so So we're not gonna work with those, right? But I'm just saying that's how you make it look super awesome and sexy and awesomeness, right? So we're gonna start doing this. That makes it a whole lot better. And then also, what we want to do is we want to go through each of these and update it to the new way that we're gonna do it. So we'll just go ahead and copy this, right? And we're just gonna go replace all that ugly code, right? Because we don't want that smelly code. That code be smelling. It be stanking, just straight stankage, right? So now we're just doing a reference to users. Everything's going to work the same. Promise. And if you don't believe me, what we can do is we can make a new user called promise. And promise is 100. And, we go back to our view controller and we just call create. And if we run that and we, so if we run that, we watch it and we watch this, we're going to see promise come up, and promise is going to be 100. Bam. Look at that. Promise. Where did it come? Yeah. Promise 100. I told you. See, everything working nice and sexy. Like, all right. But Kyle, you said it was going to get real sexy though. All right, well, in order to make it like super duper sexy, what we have to do is we have to make it generic, and we have to make it, codable, and we have to do a couple of things. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back over to our user, and when we want to delete a user, remember that we have to have a reference to its ID, right? So this is going to cause us some problems, and we actually have to make some modifications in order for it to allow us to do that. So what we got to do is we want to store that ID with the user, right? So we're going to call it var ID, and it's of type string, remember, when we were updating and deleting. And we're going to set this to nil. It's going to have a default value of nil. And then the problem with this is that our initializer is, when we want to create a user object, what it's going to do is it's going to force us to put in an ID, which we don't want to do, because when we're creating it in the app, it needs to be nil, right, by default. And we don't want to have to say nil because it kind of looks ugly. So what we have to do is we have to make a new initializer just to get back our functionality of just having the initializer with the name and the age. So what we'll do is we'll say name, which is of type string, obviously, and then age, which is of type int, obviously. So all this is going to do is it's going to get us back to where we were, because now we have ID, but we don't want to be, calling ID equal to nil or whatever. So name, and then self dot age is equal to age. Alrighty. So that will allow us to still create our user object. Now we said that we wanted it to be codable, right? So let's make it codable, right? Codable. So that means that it can be encoded and decoded to and from JSON. So let's see how that's gonna work, right? So when we create an object, what we have to do is we have to pass in something that's generic so that we can create like a user, we can create clothes, we create pets, we can do all these other things. And the way that we have to do generics is, or the way that we have to implement it is with generics, and we have to say that that generic, whatever we're passing in, is codable. And it doesn't have to necessarily be codable, but the way that we want to use it so that all of our objects are codable, our generic has to be codable. So when we create it, we have to say, T for type is going to be of type codable. So whatever we're putting in is going to be codable. Okay, so that's what the T is going to stand for when we create our function signature. So we want to create for an encodable object, codable object, right? We want to pass in an encodable object, which is codable. It still conforms to codable, and that's going to be of type codable, right? It's going to be of type codable, but like like a user is codable if we just made it codable. If we made pets, if we made a pets object that was codable, it would also fall under T. So this is where we're going with it. Anyway, we want to specify what collection we're going to be creating it into, because when we're using our Firestore service, we don't know what we're going to be passing into it. So we have to pass in that reference as well. So we have to say collection reference. And that's going to be of type our fur collection reference that we made, so that we can make everything super duper sexy. Now, what happens when we do the create is now we have this encodable object. What we have to try to do is we have to convert that object, our user, when we pass it in, to the data that it's expecting, which is essentially JSON. But the problem with our codable object is it doesn't go directly to JSON very easily, right? So it goes to data that can be converted to JSON. We know that. So what we want to do is we want to do an extension on an encodable object, or codable, encodable, so that we can create JSON from our object very easily. So what we'll do is we'll create a new file. And this is where things start getting real crazy, guys, real crazy. This is where the advanced stuff comes in. So we're going to do, we're just going to call this encodable extensions in case we want to do more, but we're only going to do one. And what we're going to do is we're going to just say we're doing an extension on encodable. And we can call our function, or we want to have a function that's gonna, it's gonna be like user dot something happens and it makes JSON, right? So we'll just say if we wanted it to be called to JSON, so user to JSON, we'll just call the function to JSON. So func to JSON, right? Like that. And this is going to return JSON, which is a dictionary of string and any, right? So what we have to do is we have to say we want to create our encodable object to data first. So let's do let object data equals try JSON encoder. And we're going to encode whatever this object is. So we'll say self, encode self. Now we're using try, but we're not in a do catch block, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to mark this with throws, because we want to be able to handle those errors if there is an error. So we'll just say throws, right? And what we also want to do is we want to create like a error that it can throw that specifically points to, hey, this is where it messed up. So we'll create a new error as well. So I know it's getting kind of weird, guys, but follow along. It's good for you. So what we'll do is we'll create a new enum, and it's going to be just called my error. Call it whatever you want. You guys could come up with a better name for it. It's going to conform to error, and we'll just say encoding error. Well, we have to say case. Come on, Kyle. What you doing, man? All right. So now that this throws, we can continue, and whenever we run into an error, we can say throw my error dot encoding error. So now that we have data, what we can do is we can say let JSON object equals try JSON serialization. So this is creating it to the data, right? And from that JSON data, we can use JSON serialization to turn it into JSON, the JSON object. Oh, ain't that awesome? Yeah, it's awesome. All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna pass in our object data, right? Like so, and now we have a JSON object. But remember that JSON object comes back as any, because it could technically be an array, and that's something that you're gonna have to watch out for if you're adding this piece into your production project. You're gonna have to make this piece a little bit more robust, but for this example, it's gonna work, and you're gonna have to come back over here and like modify it probably a little bit, but this is gonna work for our situation. So we're gonna say guard var, because we're gonna change this, and we want JSON. We want it to just be JSON, just our normal string any dictionary JSON. And we'll say JSON object as string any else, and we're just gonna say throw my error dot encoding error. So if we're not able to convert this JSON object into a dictionary or string any, because maybe it's like an array or something, then it'll throw this error, and you'll see encoding error print out in your logs if you were to print that error. All right. So now what you can do is you can just return that JSON, right? And it's going to give us a problem because we didn't overwrite this JSON, and I'm going to get into that in a bit, but let's just see how this is all going to go down first. So let's go back over to our Firestore service, and what we're going to do is we're going to take our encodable object, and since it conforms to encodable, codables automatically conform to encodable because it's just Codable is just encodable and decodable together. Then what we can do is we can take we can say let JSON equals encodable object dot to JSON. But remember, it throws, so what we have to do is say do, and we're gonna say catch, and we're gonna say print that bad boy, and we're gonna print that error. Right. Now when we do this, we can create our JSONs. We can say try encodable, bam, like that. We can wrap all this stuff in our do try block like this. And when we paste it, we no longer need the parameters, because whatever our object that we're passing in here, we can convert it into JSON, and we're just going to pass in that JSON, and that's going to create the user. Isn't that pretty cool? Now you're like, well, wait, hold on, Kyle. You kind of lost me, right? Like, how is this working, right? So what we have to do in order to test this is we have to go back over to our view controller. And this is where we're going to have some problems, and that's why I wanted to show you this way. So we're going to create for a codable object, which is decodable and encodable, right? in whatever reference we say. So let's first create a user. Let user, or let Adri equals, or no, she would not like that. Okay, so we deleted Xavier, so we'll do Xavier. Let Xavier equals user, and we're gonna initialize a user from a string and an age, or from a number. So the name is Xavier, and the age is 0. And we're gonna pass that user in here. So we'll say Xavier, and we're gonna send it to users, right? Right. So when we create this, let's go ahead and run this project. We'll go back over here, make sure that we don't have a user named Xavier so that you guys can watch it happen. See, we only have 2 Billy Bobs, a Promise, and a Kyle, right? So if everything works, then we should get one more user. We should have a total of 5 users, and it should be Xavier with 0 for the age and Xavier for the name, obviously. So let's go ahead and do that. And when we pass it, see, one more person came in. Now, there we go. Now, what you have to watch out for is it didn't do it in this because it's nil right now, which Firebase is kind of smart. But if you were to update, we would have a problem, because remember that our user object has an ID. So if this was equal to anything, so you already brought it down, now you're going to update it, now you're going to pass that JSON back up, that ID is going to have something in there. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're excluding that ID when we're passing that data up there. Now if it's nil, it'll work, it's fine. If we're not going to update, then it's fine, you don't have to worry about it. But the fact is that we are going to update, and we do have to worry about it right now. So all we're going to do is we're going to add another parameter to this, to JSON, and we're going to say excluding keys. And this is any keys that we want excluded, which we want our ID to be excluded. And it will take in an array of strings, because the key is going to be of type string. And, if we don't want to use this, then what we can do is we can just, say string like this. So this way that we can just say to JSON, or we can say excluding these specific keys. It essentially creates 2 functions for us. So we'll say for key. Oh, we want to make sure that this is plural. For key in keys. What it's going to do is it's going to say, we're going to grab that JSON right here, and we're going to say, okay, for that key, what we want to do is we want to set it to nil, so that it's excluded, just like as we saw when it was created. But if it was updated, it wouldn't work. Like it would have showed an ID. So we just want to say that. Now, what we have to do is we have to go back over to our Firestore service, and we have to say excluding, and then we just pass in what keys we want excluded, and we just want the ID excluded, just to make sure that we don't run into any problems, right? And that will continue to work. But the awesome thing is now we have encodable objects being sent up to Firebase. So let's keep going, because we almost there. Oh, and there's another thing that you can choose to do, and it's really up to you. You can either do this as throws right here, or you can do it when you actually call it. Now, I'm going to just leave it like this. You can choose. It's really up to you. It depends on how your error handling layer is set up. But I'm just going to leave it all in here just so that everything kind of looks really nice and pretty. So now we have that. We have the create in a very sexy manner. Next, we want to just go through and make sure that everything else is as sexy as it can be. So what we want to do is when we say read, we want to pass in, once again, a codable object. And or actually this can just be encodable object, and this can also be encodable. or no, this needs to be decodable because we're trying to read it, right? And this can be encodable. It'll still work. Everything will still work. Yeah, it just makes sense just to do that. So decodable, now it's saying that we are not using that. So what we're trying to read is, well, we're trying to read from a collection reference, right? And once again, we're just going to do our for collection reference like so. And what it's going to return is it's going to return, we have to say, well, we have to use our, we have to use our T in this function signature. So we have to say returning object type, object type. And this is going to be whatever our type is, but we have to say the actual type. That's what we're actually passing in, is the type that it actually is. And then what we want to do is we want to get whatever that object is out. So we have to use a completion handler. So we'll do we'll do completion at escaping and what we're going to do is we're going to return, because it's going to give us back multiple objects, right? We have to return an array of those objects, which is an array of T. So we're going to pass in a decodable object like our user, right? And we're going to say we want to read, we're going to say users, our collection reference, returning object type of type user, right? And that's just so that we can use the object type in here when we want to create an actual object. And then in the completion handler, we're passing back an array of those users. So what we do is, now that we have our function call all set up, what we have to do is we have to wrap everything. Remember, it's in a we're going to be, actually I haven't shown you guys this yet. We have to convert a snapshot. We have to convert the documents, the document into JSON, right? Or not JSON, but into an object. So we want to take a document, take the data, and turn it into JSON. So what we got to do is we have to create a new file that's going to let us do an extension on our document. So we'll just say snapshot extension in case we have multiple. And what we're going to do is we're going to do an extension, and make sure you import Firebase for this. Import Firebase Firestore and document snapshot. That's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to be doing an extension on, a document snapshot. So we could take a snapshot and the document snapshot, and we can just say decode it, and we want to decode it as some type of object, which we want it to be our users, and we want to create that. Remember that our user has an ID, so we need to fill that slot with ID so that we can reference the ID later on. So we have to say we want to decode this document snapshot as a user, and we want to also include the ID when we're encoding it. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So func, we're going to decode. We're going to decode whatever this is, the document snapshot, decode it. And we're going to say as, and we're going to say object type. And this is where once again, we're going to have to use generic. So we're going to put in right here T, and this is going to be obviously decodable because we need to decode it, right? So object type is going to be of type T dot type, because we're going to be using that actual type to create, well, we're going to be using the T to actually, the object type to actually create that object. And we want to say, maybe we do, maybe we don't want to include the IDs. It might depend on your object. For this one, we say yes, we do want to include it, but we're gonna give a argument that gives you the choice of whether you want to include it or not. So including ID, right? And that will be of type bool, and we'll just give it a default answer of true, so that it's true unless stated otherwise. And what this will do is it'll decode it, and it will return that singular object, like so. So let's just go ahead and let's just go ahead and fill in the logic for this. Oh, and this one also throws, because what we're going to do is we have to use the JSON decoder, right? And then, or we have to use the JSON serializer to create that JSON into data. And then from that data, we have to use JSON decoder to turn that data into an object. So what we have to do is we have to say var document JSON. And remember that the document snapshot has the .data, which gives us the JSON back. So we'll just say data. And if including ID, if we want to include the ID of the snapshot, remember it's this auto ID over here, this long string, and we want to put that as the ID of the object, then we're going to say true, which it's going to default to true. What we're going to say is document document JSON, and we're gonna just put in a new value called ID into that JSON, which doesn't have right now, it only has name and age. We're gonna add it in ID, and we're gonna pass in our document ID right here, and this document ID is the same thing as this string right here. So now we're gonna be able to reference that ID later. So what we have to say is we have to say let document data equal try JSON serialization, because we have to take this JSON and turn it into data with the JSON object, and that's going to be our document JSON, and writing options, we don't need any. And what we do is decoded, we have to get a decoded object. Let that decoded object equals try JSON decoder initialize like a sexy mama, and then we're going to decode it as whatever object type that we're going to be passing into it. So we'll pass in that object type. Oh yeah, document, and we're going to pass in for the data. We just pass in our document data, like so. So now what has ended up happening is we ended up decoding an object, and now we have this object right here, and all we have to do is just say return my decoded object. So I know it's super crazy. You're like, whoa, my brain is exploding. But, when you see how sexy it can be, you're going to be like, damn, I never want to go back. I know you won't. Okay, so let's get back into it. So what we have to do is when we loop through, well, we're not doing anything up there. As long as we have a snapshot, when we loop through it, what we want is an array of objects, right? Because we need to return that array of objects. Because remember that it's always going to be an array, because even if you have one object, it's going to be an array with that one object in it. That one user, Xavier or whatever. So we have to loop through the documents. This is our document snapshot, and each document now, instead of having data, we can turn it into a user. So if we wanted to say decoded as a user, right? And we just say .self when we're working with when we're working with decoded, but yeah, all this stuff needs to be wrapped in a do try block. So let's do that right now. Do catch, and then we'll just print that error. And we'll grab this like so. And then what we want to do is, while we're looping through it and decoding each of these objects into whatever it's going to be, like a user, and with the say try, we're not going to do this, but yeah. While we're doing that, what we want to do is we want to append it to an array of objects, right? So we'll do we'll say var objects. Yeah, we could just call it objects, is equal to an array of whatever t is, whatever t is. So, oh, and we have to initialize it. So we want to initialize it so that it's an empty array, and then whenever we're able to decode each whatever object that document is, we can just append that object into the objects. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So we'll just say try. For each document in snapshot.documents, we're going to say document.decode as, and then we're going to say whatever that object type is. So object type dot self, like so. So now we have that object, or we're decoding it, but now we need to store it. So let object equals whatever ends up coming out. And what we're going to do is we're going to say objects dot append new object. Aw, yeah, like that. So now after we have all those objects appended, we can just say completion, and we're going to pass in our objects because it's an array of those objects that were decoded properly. Awesome. So let's go ahead and use this. We've done a lot so far, but we haven't actually integrated any of this stuff. So let's go ahead and start using some of this stuff so that you can start seeing, like, oh, Kyle, I can actually see what you're doing now. You ain't just talking that baloney. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to get our Firestore service dot shared dot read, right? And we're going to read from .users, and we're going to be returning a user dot self, I think, and we're going to get an array of users. All right, and normally what I would do is I'd wrap this in another layer, but it's already getting super complex as it is. But yeah, so when we have those users, all we have to do is say self.users is equal to users, and we just have to say self.tableview dot reload that data. So now what it's going to do is going to use our Firebase service. It's going to grab from the users collections, and it's going to decode each of those objects, turn them into users. It's going to pass those users to us. We're going to pass those users right here, and then those users are being used throughout here, and that is how we're going to be able to see all this data come through all together right now. Now, while this runs, because it might take a little while, because we just did some super complex stuff, what we can do is we can start writing our add. So let's go ahead and do our Firestore service dot shared dot oops. Okay, here we go. And as you can see, bam, look at all that. Look at all of that. Yeah. So we got them all in there and working. Isn't that pretty cool? That's pretty cool if you ask me. So what we're going to do is we're going to do our add. So, or our create. So create for, we have to pass in an encodable. So the user that we're creating is encodable. So we'll say user in dot users. Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? So now we're reading right here, which is populating our table view. And then when we create it, remember that it's always listening. So whenever it sees that there's a change, it's going to call this again. It's going to decode all the documents. It's going to return our users, and it's going to repopulate that table view. So this is getting exciting. I'm liking it. I'm liking it. I'm liking it. All right, so let's see. Dang, this has been a long video. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to add Andrew, and Andrew is 12, and we're going to add, bam, look at Andrew right there. Instantly, super awesome. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to delete, but right now our delete doesn't be doing nothing. Oh, and we also want to update, right? We need to be able to update Billy Bob to 50 because we said that he was 50, but 55, but he's not. Now, as you can see, it's not doing anything because we haven't implemented that yet. So what we have to do is we have to go back over to our Firestore service. Oh yeah. And we have to go down to the update. Now, it's only updating. Oh, we were probably only updating Xavier. That was kind of weird, huh? Okay, so what we have to do is we have to change our update to take in, once again, an encodable because we need to turn whatever object that we're going to update, we have to turn that into data that's going to be sent up to, we need to turn it into JSON that's going to be sent up to Firebase. So we have to take in an encodable. So T is going to be of type encodable. And we want to take in, we want to update for an encodable object like so, and that's going to be of type T. And then we want to update whatever that object in whatever collection they're in. So we have to say in collection reference, and remember that these names don't even matter. In, for, you can call it whatever you want. You don't even have to put it. You can put underscore or leave it just collection reference and encodable object. It just makes it look sexier when you're reading it. So for collection reference like so, and yeah, so what we're going to do is we're going to pass in an object. It's going to get turned into JSON, and we're going to update that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to see it update in the table because there will have been changes. So we'll just say do catch, and we're going to print that error if there is one. Let's make this look a little bit sexier, right? Alrighty. So we're going to cut that because we're just going to put it right there. And we're going to be changing out a lot of that stuff anyway, but whatever. And now this is the part where we want to get our JSON. So we'll say let JSON is equal to try encodable object, which will be our user when we pass it in. We're going to turn it to JSON. But remember, we need to exclude the ID or else it will automatically add that ID into the JSON that's going up there. So we want to say we're going to exclude the ID. And we could have put in age and name in here, and that would like delete the age and delete the name from it. But, that doesn't really make sense for what we're doing. So we ain't going to do that. We ain't going to do that. So, yeah. And we want to make sure that we do have an ID because we're going to be passing it in right here and we don't want to get any errors. So guard let, and we're just going to say ID is equal to whatever this encodable object's ID is, but we're going to run into a problem right here because it doesn't know that it has ID. So this encodable object, we don't know, it's an encodable object, right? There's no guarantee that it's going to have an ID because we don't know that it's going to be a user or like a pet or whatever. So what we have to do is we have to create a brand new protocol. And we're going to do it right here in the users just because this is the only place that we're going to use it, proto call. And this is going to we'll just say it's going to be a Firebase object, right? Firebase object, and it could be literally whatever. You could call it identifiable. Let's call it that, identifiable. I don't even know if that's how you spell it, but yeah. So all we want to say is our identifiable object has an ID. So we'll say var ID of type string. So as long as we know that it is identifiable, we know that it will have an ID. So now we just make user conform to identifiable, which it already does because it has an ID right there. And now, hold on, let me see. Yeah. Oh, optional string, right? Optional string, and we have to say it has a get and a set method. You can get it, you can set it, baby. Oh yeah. So what we can do is we can say we want whatever's coming in here to be encodable and identifiable. It has to be and it's a single ampersand. So and identifiable. I think I spelled that right. Yeah. Well, I spelled it the same way that I spelled it before. I don't know if that's right or not. So now this encodable object, which we could have called it encodable and identifiable now, has an ID. Else we're gonna just say return. Else, or no, we're in a do try block, so we'll just say throw my error dot encoding error or whatever, right? And you could pass in whatever error, it doesn't really matter. Anyway, we want to make sure that we have the ID because that's the ID that we're going to be passing in right here when we're referring to that object. And the data that we're going to be passing is the JSON, which is excluding that ID. So let's go ahead and take that out. And now look at, would you look at that? That is super duper sexy. I don't know who told you it's not, but it is. Now, like I said, I usually have one extra layer sitting on top of this. I'll call it like user networking layer or something like that. And it would handle everything. Like I wouldn't usually have the user go directly in here. I would have a layer that sits on top of it that deals with the user and makes it look even more sexy. But you know, we've been doing this for a long time, so I'm just trying to speed it up for you guys. Just a heads up. So what we're gonna do is in this did select row, this is where we're updating, and we have the updated user right there. We're gonna say for Firestore service dot shared dot update for an object that's identifiable and encodable, which is our updated user. Updated user in where? The users, you already know. Alrighty. So now what we should be able to do is when we go ahead and run this, we should be able to select a user, change their age, and when we press save, it will automatically update because once again, the read is in the view did load, and it's always watching. It has listeners, and it's always watching that collection and making sure that whenever something changes, it's going to update. It's going to run this block of code right here, which is updating our table view. So let's go ahead and say, Billy Bob, you ain't that old. You older. Yeah, so now Billy Bob's 60. We go over here. We look at Billy Bob and we're like, damn, Billy Bob, you 60. If my connection ever runs. Anyway, if it's updated here, you already know what it is. It's working. All right. Well, let's see if it runs. Let's see. All right. Damn, Billy Bob, you 60. See that? All right. Okay. So last but not least is delete. So all we have to do is we have to go back to our Firestore service. We go over here. We're going to make it look so much sexier. So let's do that. So do, once again, catch, once again, print, once again, error. We're going to steal this bad boy right there. We're going to say bam, 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 bam. And yeah, the what we're going to do is we're going to only need to have this thing be identifiable. So the delete just needs to make sure that there is an ID to delete, right? So what we'll do is we'll say T is of type identifiable, and all it's going to take in, we're going to just say delete whatever type of object it is. So we'll just say identifiable object, like so, and that will be of type T because it's identifiable. In collection reference of type, you already know, our for collection reference. Make sure you don't get that twisted. And yeah, once we have that, all we have to do is make sure that we do actually have the ID. So we'll say guard let ID is equal to identifiable object dot ID else return, or else we could just throw our error throw, or no, throw my error dot encoding. Oh, I mean, you know, you already know, like so. So the document with that ID, and then we want this to oh, you guys didn't tell me I was doing it all wrong. Why didn't you tell me? So you see how we're saying collection reference right here? Instead of users, it's not going to be users. It's going to be the collection reference. Come on, guys. You didn't even tell me. You didn't even tell nobody. You just going to let it happen, huh? Y'all naughty. Y'all some naughties. Haughty naughties. So this makes it super dynamic. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, instead of users, we want the collection reference. So now whatever collection reference you choose, it's going to automatically get that reference for there. And what it's going to do is it's going to grab that document and it's going to delete it. So let's go back over to our view controller once and for all. And as long as it's editing, the editing style is set to delete, well, we can move forward with ourselves then. And what we're going to do is we're just going to say let user equal users at that index path dot row, and then we're just going to say for Firestore service dot shared, and we're going to say we just want to delete a user, and we're going to do that in users. You see that? You see that? Look at that. Look at all this. Look at all this functionality in 60 lines of code. Oh, yeah. So, yeah. And if we do this, we should watch it. We should just watch it because it's going to be so sexy when we delete it all nasty. Like, ooh, we going to delete Billy Bob all dead. We going to delete him. All right. Damn, it's about time. All right, so now when we slide and we delete, there goes Billy Bob. He's gone. Well, he's a goner. And we want to delete that promise. And we want to delete other Billy Bob. And we want to update Xavier because now he's one. Oh, yeah. That's how you do it, guys. So, I know this was an excruciatingly long video. I know that. And, it might have been extremely confusing. I know. But if I was going to implement Firebase into a project, this would be pretty similar to how I do it. Like I said, I would add one more layer that interacts directly with the Firebase layer. I wouldn't be having this Firestore all over the place. It looks kind of sloppy. I would like to keep it nice and condensed, but that's just me. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you stuck around this long, congratulations, you're awesome. Thumbs up to you. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, follow on Twitter. And, be on the lookout for that Kilo Loco app. Working super hard on it. And, make sure you share the channel as well. So that is how you do, CRUD operations in Firestore, and that's how you take it to a production level, reusable, super dynamic level. And I hope that I didn't explode your brain, and I hope I didn't bore you too much. So Thanks, guys. Appreciate your time. And make sure that you keep coding passionately.